talked to David Vaughn about this. He asked me to sort of give you guys sort of like a, like I said earlier, about corporate responsibility, about the balancing of trying to act responsibly in an industry and preserve jobs, all that kind of thing. Right? So how does that work in the real world? I mean, you can sort of sit there and say, yeah, it would be okay to close a fishery or reduce a fishery, but what's the impact when you have to go and tell somebody who has a mortgage or a child they're trying to put through college that they don't have a job anymore because we're acting responsibly to help a fishery in Japan? Okay, so how do you balance that off? And that's really what we're going to talk about. This really resonates with me. There's the sort of the question we're posing. Can you operate a business in an exploitive industry? Understand, this is an exploitive industry. I mean, I make more money. The less fish is available, and I have it, I make more money because the price of fish goes up. So there's a book there called The Last Codfish. The last codfish is worth a lot of money. People will pay a lot of money for a dwindling resource. Okay, so how do you operate a business in an industry like this in a responsible manner and still make a profit? For me personally, this really resonates because I'm from a family of 6 or 7 generations of fishermen. Okay, I have never fished in my life other than fly fishing and that kind of thing. But I worked for this big multinational seafood company. It was basically headquartered in Sweden. And I went to visit my uncle one time in Newfoundland and was told basically, because of my connection to the seafood industry and the collapse of the Newfoundland fishery, that I was no longer welcomed, not only in his house, but in that town. And that has always resonated with me. I mean, I don't lose sleep over it or anything like that, but it's always like, why can't we operate in a responsible manner, okay? And in 1992, this is again very personal for me, the Canadian fishery was essentially closed because of overfishing. And the entire cod industry collapsed. And thousands of jobs were lost. And for us, so what happened to the cod fishery? 500 years, it was the king of the global market, and then it collapsed, signaling one of the biggest ecological disasters of the 20th century. Some people equate it to a larger ecological disaster than the American bison. A high of 2 billion pounds a year being fished out of Newfoundland, completely gone, nothing left. 35,000 jobs directly, 350,000 jobs indirectly gone. So you can imagine an entire way of life, communities shut down because of this. Okay, why did this happen? We didn't listen to the inshore fishermen. What we were hearing was that the amount of fish being caught was increasing. So there was a lot more fish being caught, but the size of the fish that was being caught was less and less and less. Okay, so an example. What's your name? Amelia. Amelia is an inshore fisherman. Okay, so she gets in her dory every day and rows out, right, with her jigger, catches 300-400 pounds of fish. Okay, and she's telling me, Darrell, there's a problem with your industry. The fish, I'm seeing less and less big fish. I'm catching these small little codfish every day. All the rest of you guys all work in these big multinational seafood companies. So I'm going to you and say, hey, how's the fishing? And she says, great, all kinds of fish, no problem, right? So, and I'm the government. Who am I going to listen to? Okay, who am I going to listen to? The 8 of you guys or Amelia over there? Who has the votes? Who has the money? Okay, so we didn't listen to her, and the industry collapsed. Okay, even though she was probably in a better position to let us know what was really going on, because she's seeing it every single day, and she's seeing it over a period of time. Okay, and it's very important. I mean, this is a really important point because, and I'm going to cycle back to this in a little while because we're seeing the same thing happening right now in Norway. And Norway is considered one of the most proactively managed and best managed fisheries on the planet. And we've been saying for the last 3 years, your fish is getting smaller. We've been through this before with Canada. Are you going to do anything about it before it's too late? And Norway, to their credit, just announced a major decrease in their quotas because they don't want the same thing to happen that happened in Canada, which was the wholesale destruction of the fishery. Okay. So we didn't listen. This is a good one because I know some of you will go on to be scientists, right? Scientists were colluding with the government to give incorrect information about the Canadian fishery. So you're a scientist. You got all this great data, and you go to because I'm paying you. You're basically saying, how would you like that information to be written? I'm not going to be true to science and give you the correct information. I'm going to give you whatever you want because you're paying my salary. So I need you to tell me good information because I don't want to listen to her over there. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Okay? I want to listen to you guys because you have all the votes and you run the big multinational companies. So tell me that, give me that report again, only make sure it basically goes against everything she's saying. Okay? That's what was happening in Canada. Okay? So what would you guys have done? And there's two parts to this thing. There's you have a fishery that's about to collapse. What are you going to do about it? That's one part of it. And the other part of it is you've got Bristol Seafood sitting here that's 6 months old, finding out that there's no fishery left in Canada. So there's two parts we want to talk about. First of all, let's explore the idea that you have a fishery that you know is in trouble, but you have all these jobs, and you have these votes. You want to get reelected, and if you shut the fishery down, you know you have no chance of getting reelected. What are you going to do? Thoughts?
Well, could you find another fishery?
Another fishery?
Well, yeah, because you said the one in Canada is in trouble, right?
Right.
But you still need to keep the jobs, so could you find another place that, like...
Well, let's talk first about, this is Canada, you're the Canadian government. Okay? So let's forget Bristol for the time being. Let's just deal with this on a macro level. You guys need to figure out what to do with this fishery. You've got 35,000 people in Newfoundland that are not going to have jobs tomorrow. Okay? You have 350,000 people in Atlantic Canada that support that fishery that are not going to have jobs 6 months from now. Codfish is the single most important seafood in the world. And so you need huge volumes of it. And the cost of farming a codfish is probably, I'm just going to throw crazy numbers. It's about $7 a pound, and you sell it for $4 a pound. So economically, it's a nightmare. You lose $3 a pound on every fish you sell. Okay, and in 1992, we didn't have the farming technology that we have in 2012. Okay, 30 years ago or 20 years ago, we didn't have the same technology we have today in terms of feed technology, pen technology, et cetera. So think about trying to do something. It's 20 years ago. The technology just isn't there, right? We don't even have cell phones in 1992. Okay, so that's not really, it's not an option. The option to reintroduce a species is not an option. That's not going to happen.
Why are you selling it for so much less?
Because that's all the market will bear. Okay, if I go to you and say, would you please buy my codfish for $7? You're going to say, man, I can buy chicken for $1 a pound.
Are there any other, like, so the cod industry is, like, done?
Done.
Right, so that's not...
Gone.
That's not really... Is there, like, while you're rehabilitating the cod, like, you know, trying to reintroduce it, is there another fish you could...
There's crab, but it's 2 months a year, but there's no fin fish. Haddock doesn't swim that far north. Really, the only fishery is cod. It's a one industry town. It's like Detroit. You produce cars. No more car industry. The city's dead. I mean, there's other, you know, people do other things, but for the most part, the vast majority of people are working in the cod industry. And there is no other fish.
I think you'd have to shut it down, even if you didn't get reelected, because if you shut it down before it was completely wiped out, at least at some point it would rehabilitate, rather than completely wiping it out and there are no more jobs directly and indirectly from then on.
Right.
Not like indefinitely until it recovers.
Okay, so let's pretend you're the Minister of Fisheries, okay? And you're a fisherman, okay? And you have a mortgage and 2 children in college. So what are you going to tell the fisherman that now you're shutting down her way of life? And she has no economic means to pay for her mortgage. The banker here is going to take her house away from her. And the dean over here is going to kick her kids out of college because they have no money to pay for college. So what do you tell the fisherman?
Just it's an indefinite move, I guess, until the cod industry rehabilitates, rather than completely wiping it out and from her generation on having no jobs related to it at all.
And what are you going to say to the government person?
I'm not happy.
Why not?
Because I don't have a way to make money then. Unless if I find something else.
Well, so your significant other goes to the grocery store this week, and sorry, you have no credit left at the grocery store.
Just
Because-
definitely switch jobs.
To what? Have you ever been to the most rural part of Maine? Or I'm not sure if you're from Maine, but okay, where are you from?
Massachusetts.
Okay, think of the most rural part of Massachusetts, right? And maybe the only thing in that town is a lumber mill. The lumber mill goes out of business. What else are you going to do? You're in an area here where there's nothing else to do. Basically, in Newfoundland, I mean, traditionally, the husband went out and fished, and the wife worked in the fish plant. Okay, that was it. There was nothing else. The only other business in town was like maybe a motel, the grocery store, kind of stuff to support the fishing industry. 100% of the employment in that town depended directly upon the fishing industry. There's no fishing industry anymore. Okay, there's no tourism to speak of. It's in some remote place. There's 5 generations of fishermen. So now you're telling this fisherman she can't go fishing, but she has a mortgage to pay. She can't get food at the local supermart, and her children can no longer go to college. They waited too long. Sorry, you had a question?
I don't understand why it would be an issue to import foods from other fisheries.
Because of the cost.
The cost.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about that in a little bit because we do this all the time. But we're in an area where there's transportation, it's easy to get stuff here in and out. You're talking about rural areas that to divert a boat to would cost horrendous amounts of money, and then you're never going to be able to recoup that in the marketplace. Because at the end of the day, somebody still has to buy this stuff. And if your fish, because you're producing it in northern Newfoundland, is $7 a pound, and you're producing fish in Boston for $4, nobody's going to buy your fish. So the economics of it just don't work. Right. Whole towns just closed. I mean, people will abandon the cities or abandon towns because there was nothing left to do there. And you could collect a government check just as easily sitting in a bigger city like St. John's or, like I said, Halifax or Toronto, than you could sitting in, a place like Port-au-Port, Newfoundland.
Something that I don't get was, so you said before that people would pay a pretty penny for species that there aren't very many of
Right.
left. And at the same time, it doesn't make economic sense to pay that money if the species is being depleted. So where's the balance? When do I say, oh sure, I'll pay $20 for that
Yeah.
cod? Or,
Well, the thing is, there's other cod fisheries. There's the Alaskan cod fishery.
okay, so in comparison with others.
So you could take like the Newfoundland cod. You could say, okay, we're going to catch the last codfish, for example, and it'll be $50 a pound. Well, unfortunately, there's the Alaskan codfish fishery, and there's tons of fish. Now, it's not identical, but it's close enough in the marketplace that people will just eat the Alaskan codfish. And that's the strategy I'm going to get to right now, what happened with us. Because here we were 6 months into this business at Bristol Seafood, and our whole business model was based on the Canadian fishery, and suddenly there's no Canadian fishery. What are we going to do? We have no fish. We have to figure a way around it, right? And we're a little more flexible because we're not dealing with towns in the coastal areas of Newfoundland. We still have the ability to source globally. Okay, so as opposed to sitting here worrying about what's happening in Nova Scotia or Newfoundland or the Gulf of Maine, because I mean, one of the things that after the closure of the fishery that happened was, I remember my banker calling me up, says, I just read in the newspaper, big banner headline, the Portland Press Herald, Canadian fishery collapses, right? And I'm thinking, and he's reading this like, you guys still in business? Right? Because he's reading the press, which is, the fishery's done. I said, oh, we're still good. Okay, how are we gonna, what are we gonna do? So we had a 3-part strategy. Diversifying product lines, because we were very heavily dependent on haddock, which is a local New England, prime product, prime seafood item. And suddenly there's no haddock coming out of Nova Scotia. There's very little haddock here in Maine. We had to start looking at aquaculture. What can we do to supplement the wild-caught fish that we have? And then we have to find other sustainable fisheries that are wild-caught outside of this local area. And for us, the big thing was, okay, haddock is the number one item we sell. Where else do they catch haddock? Well, they catch it in Russia, they catch it in Norway, they catch it in Iceland. So we looked at the fisheries, which one is the most sustainable fishery of the ones that still was catching haddock. And we felt the best one was Norway in terms of the sustainability, the way it was proactively managed. So let's go to Norway and let's go after the product there. The FAS means frozen at sea. And our growth, we went from 12 million to 40 million very quickly because of suddenly we had fish, nobody else had fish. So in an industry that was being shrunken here in Maine, there was companies going out of business. We were actually expanding because we were globally sourcing from sustainable fisheries. The big new thing that's happening right now is you've been talking about is sustainability and food safety. So we looked at about a year ago, how do we reposition Bristol Seafood? Last year was our 20th anniversary. How do we reposition the company for the next 20 years? And still at the back of my mind is this conversation with my uncle, 24 years ago, where like you're part of the problem. So how can we be in this industry but be part of the solution at the same time? How can we be the good guys and not be like everybody else who looked upon with well, is that fish really sustainable and that kind of thing. So we need to figure out how to make this transition for the next 20 years. Okay. We asked this question: can we operate a business in an exploitative industry in a socially and environmentally responsible manner and still make a profit? Because it's one thing to be socially responsible, be environmentally responsible, et cetera, but if you don't make money, if you can't make money, then you're not going to be in business. And then it goes to the 75 people I have working for me to go out and tell them, hey, well, we're socially responsible, but you don't have a job anymore because we can't pay the bills. So it has to be that balance. How do you create that balance?
I want to throw this out to you guys. Do you notice in your lifetimes, just think in the last 5 or so years, do you notice people caring about their food, where it comes from, whether it's, wholesome, environmentally friendly, all that kind of stuff? Any signs, any like real concrete signs of that you notice?
For I don't know, like commercials and stuff, they're making more organic, like a big deal, organic plants and organic meat. Like I know my mom personally leads grass-fed cows.
Yeah, that's been on the rise. So I'm just throwing this back, right, at Bristol, right, which is that it seems, at least in this country, I can't represent the world, but in this country, people are, and they're spending money for it too. I mean, the number of Whole Foods markets that are all over the place, and people, even during the recession. I mean, I remember going into Whole Foods a couple of years ago and going, we're in a recession? Right, there's lines out the door. Who are all these people who are spending a lot more money to get really good, environmentally sustainable whole food? So that right there, I would say to you, if I'm a consultant for you, I'd say jump on that bandwagon because people are spending money to do it. People want to know, and we were asking downstairs. How do I know when I go into Hannaford's that it's sustainable? Every time I go and I buy fish, I try to ask the fish guy. Right, and I get these kind of half-baked answers. I'm like, oh well, and then should I buy wild-caught salmon from Alaska, came all the way across, or do I buy, all those things? So it seems to me if you have something that you could absolutely get to consumers and they know that it's done sustainably, and there's some stamp on it, if this MSC stamp is on something I buy at Hannaford's, right? I think you got a lot of customers.
Yeah, I mean, the key for us was that we recognized a couple things. One was that we weren't going to be the biggest seafood company. We're not going to be Walmart, but we could be L.L. Bean. So we could look at ourselves as being a high quality fish house, and have certain ethics and responsibilities that we can hold ourselves up as this is who we are. And yeah, we're going to charge a little bit more, but we're not trying to be Walmart. Okay, we're not trying to be this massive, massive organization that's driven on price only and volume. So that's one approach. The second thing that was important to recognize was that exactly what you guys were saying. There's a whole new education around food. Okay, anybody seen the movie Food Inc? Okay, if you eat that, you'll never go to McDonald's, or you watch it, you'll never go to McDonald's again, right? I mean, people are starting to get more and more aware of what's in their food they're eating. Okay, the third thing is, and this is a really important one. If, like, my wife and I, we have shares in a farm. We don't own the farm, but it's the food shares. You go every week and you pick up so much food. So one of the things we do is you buy farm eggs, not wild, but free-range chicken, or eggs from free-range chickens. I don't know what a dozen eggs cost in the grocery store, like $1.50. They're $4 at the farm, right? But that's the real cost of food, okay? We have subsidized our food to such an extent that we as a country, the US, has the lowest cost per capita of food. And we also have one of the worst, our food is awful for the most part. The mass production of food that we do here is terrible food, and there's diseases and there's all kinds of health issues related to that. So what we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years is that there's been a real education about what you're eating and what you're putting into your body, okay? And so part of our strategy is, okay, we can appeal to the consumers that want food safety and want food quality. So going exactly to your point,
and want a healthy environment. Exactly. 'Cause I think that's big too.
Yeah. So what we did is we said, okay, we need to restructure, rebrand the company, and basically just take what was Bristol Seafood and just make this shift to the new Bristol Seafood. And we would be a leader in the industry in corporate responsibility. And that for us meant we weren't going to say we're the leader in sustainability, because sustainability is a really nice thing, but it's not as important as responsibility. Responsibility goes beyond sustainable fishing. Sustainable fishing, as an example, is us buying Japanese farm-raised scallops. Okay? It's totally sustainable. It's a farm-raised product. But the carbon footprint for us to use those scallops is horrific. They come from Japan to California to New York to Boston to Portland and get on a plane and go back to California. Okay, so the carbon footprint is outrageous. So we have to look at ways to take that sustainable fishery and make it a more responsible corporate item that we're selling. We can't just be saying, yeah, it's sustainable, but the carbon footprint is outrageous. Okay, and we were willing to sacrifice short-term profits and market share to make this transition. I didn't tell my banker that, but we were willing to do that. Okay, so we came up. Actually, our cameraman back in the corner there is my marketing manager. So we brought Brian on board about a year ago, and we started this whole transition. Okay, and part of it was, okay, what does corporate responsibility mean to us? Responsible sourcing of products, sustainable. Is there chain of custody? So that you know the fish is safe to eat. What's the carbon footprint, et cetera. Responsible production. So we get it here. What are we doing in the plant to make sure we're being responsible in terms of green technology, recycling, all those kinds of things? What can we do to better make our product more responsible? Part of those two things is also what are we doing in our community? Like the reason why you're here today is part of our corporate strategy is education. Okay. And then the third sort of pillar of this is that making sure everything that leaves here is guaranteed to be food safe and high quality. That's why, I don't know if you saw the QC lab earlier. The QC lab, that's a brand new thing. Everybody in that lab today weren't working here a year ago. Okay. Actually, there's a Waynflete student over there. I don't know if you saw, yeah, okay. Responsibly sourcing, only from fisheries that are sustainable. We want chain of custody control, so we know the fish we're getting is actually what people say it is. Okay, partnering with GMRI and other corporate partners like Hannaford, Gulf of Maine Research Institute, right next door. Okay, they're basically trying to provide the science that both the fishermen and industry and governments will all buy into. They're trying to be an independent science organization, not being driven by any kind of special interest, or the fishermen versus the government, or the fishermen versus producers, or anything like that. They're there as an independent body. So that hopefully their science can give us, enable us to make better decisions. Quality assured. You just spent an hour with Beth, so really the key for us is once we've done all the proper sourcing, the proper producing, is to make sure everything that leaves here has a stamp of approval on it. That means it's safe to eat and it's a high quality product. We're doing third-party food safety and traceability audits. We have a brand new inspection process, and basically we're like LL Bean. You don't like the product, send it back, or it's 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Okay? Yes.
Are you guys aware of waterfootprint.org?
No, not familiar with that. Are you, Brian?
No.
No.
Okay, I took a hydropolitics class in high school, and it's a website that for corporations to look at how it's kind of like carbon footprint. It's a similar concept, but how your water use can be managed, and you can get certified here. I don't know, it might be something
Really?
you want to look at.
I'll give you a business card. If you want to email
Yeah.
that to me, that'd be really cool.
What's it called? Water.
Waterfootprint.org, and it shows you the water footprint. It's like tracing the.
Oh, we got it on video, so we'll know it.
Okay. It traces the water footprint of different, like apples, milk, grains, all
Yeah.
these different products.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we use it. I mean, the amount of water we use here is insane. So what we're trying to do is come up with recycling systems where we could cut our water down by 60 to 80%. And that's, I mean, in dollars, that's like $100,000 to $150,000 a year. So the payback on the machinery suddenly becomes very quick. So number one, it makes economical sense to do it. Number two, it makes environmental sense to do it. So like I said before, it's a win-win, because we still have to balance this equation of, okay, it's great to do all that and spend all that money, but if I can't make it back, then I'm out of business. And what's my responsibility to the environment is a certain amount, but I also have a responsibility to 70 people who have families, and so we can't ignore that responsibility as a corporation, that we're an employer, and not only the 70 people that work here, but all the spin-off businesses around us. That's a very real responsibility we have to the economy and to this town. And we can't ignore that. So we have to balance it. And that's what this is really all about. So how's it working? Well, we had a lot of resistance initially to change, because people were doing things a certain way for 20 years, and suddenly I'm saying, no, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to do it this way. So a lot of bad habits, a lot of different habits that we had to try and change. We had organizational changes because some of the key leaders within the company would not agree to do this. They'd agree publicly. They'd say, yeah, I'm totally committed to this, but just, in their core, they didn't believe in it. Imagine Walmart trying to be LL Bean. That's what you had going on here, right? And then the market problems. Okay, so we're doing all these things. It's costing all kinds more money, so we have to charge more for the fish. And other guys are out there doing it, half measures or whatever, and they're charging less for the fish. So the consumers are sitting there saying, why should we buy your fish? You're more expensive. Right? And there was no real incentive for the consumers to pay more for our fish. So they stopped buying our fish because they could buy it cheaper somewhere else. Very slow transition of product lines. We had a lot of dependency in certain items. It's hard to transition customers away from that. Continuing on, here's the good news.
Yeah.
That was the bad news.
That's not the end of the story.
The good news is greater transparency, improved quality. Our quality is really, we have virtually no quality issues anymore. We've changed our information systems for better strategic decision making. We've implemented strategic marketing and purchasing plans. A lot of this stuff, we're forced to do it now because we have to be better and more efficient. We can't just do things the way we used to always do them. Now we have to be better at what we do because we are trying to be LL Bean and not Walmart, or saturate the market with huge volumes of cheap product. And we're developing new strategic partnerships. We've opened up a partnership now in China. We've had partnerships in Norway and Japan for a period of time. And we have a greater community profile now. people are starting to look at our company and say, oh yeah, that's who we want to be like. So the partnership with GMRI, the partnership with the Waynflete partnership goes back several years. We have a better partnership today with Hannaford Brothers. So those things are starting to really blossom into Bristol's the kind of company we want to do business with. Okay, and the good news is for us, we just had our best June, I think, ever. So we're starting to now, maybe we're starting to see, oh yeah, the rest of the industry or the rest of our customers and like that are starting to catch up with us. So hopefully the transition has worked. But even if we still don't return to those numbers that we had before profit-wise, I don't care. Because I like the company I've got now much better than I liked the company a year ago. And we may not make as much per sale, but we'll have a lot more sales because of the type of business we're going to have. People will do what you said before. People will come here and buy more. We may have to charge a little bit less profit, but in the long run, we'll make more money, which is good for the company, is good for the community. So our green initiative we started about 3 or 4 years ago, and the cost has been negligible in terms of the added cost. You're talking fractions of pennies per pound. It's really not that expensive to do this, and part of it is there's just better technology than there was 10, 20 years ago. I mean it really is. There really is a movement going on to be greener, we like to think we're on the leading edge of that in the seafood industry. I mean, certainly other industries are way ahead of us, and that's what we're trying to basically emulate. But for us, the key things for us is how much more greening can we do? We're looking at whether or not we can do solar, and we do rolling blackouts. We shut down part of the plants to save electrical on the grid. So there's a bunch of things we're doing, and we use biodiesel in our trucks, and it's really what it boils down to is it's a mindset by management and employees that when you're doing business, is there a way that we can do it greener or more responsible? And we looked at this is the second year I think we've done some funding for this program. We fund the GMRI, so we're funding education as well. We know that we don't have all the answers, okay? The answers for a lot of this stuff is going to come from science, and education. So part of our responsibility as a good company is to provide funding for education and science. And go ahead.
I was just wondering, why did you choose this profession, like knowing the risks and the responsibilities?
I didn't know the risks. It's who knows? I mean, my background is finance. International finance, okay, so I mean it does play into this industry in terms of because we're a global sourcing company, but it was for me, I was in public accounting, and I had clients who were fishermen and fish plants, and I got recruited by this big company in Sweden to run their finances here in North America. Then I became president, and then I bought them out. And so it's sort of like an evolutionary thing. And I love the industry. I mean, it's a really neat industry in terms of the people you're dealing with, the challenges. I mean, some days are really challenging. It's just, I don't know what to tell you. It's a fun industry, but there are days when there's major challenges. And this is the major challenge for Bristol Seafood in the past 10 years. The biggest challenge. I mean, we the first 10 years was surviving. How can we survive as a new company in an industry that's transitioning because of supply problems? We proved we could do that. So then the next 10 years is, okay, what's our next big challenge? Diversification of product lines, that kind of thing, managing good growth. We managed to do all that well. So then the next challenge was, okay, we've for 20 years we've basically been in survival and some kind of growth mode. And at my age, I'm in my early 50s, it's like, okay, what do I want to do now to really make an impact, a lasting impact on my industry, on my community? What do I need? What do I want to do?